thinking about, this term, Black paranoia. That's a very real thing, right? Like getting up in the morning and knowing that, like, oh, I have to go get gas today, or I have to go to the grocery store. Oh, and by the way, I may have an incident with a Karen. And so you try to think of all of the ways in which, like, I know for some Black people, like, it's a very real issue. Am I going to encounter this today? And if I do, let me try to, pre-plan what my reaction will be potentially, right? Like that's something that white people
role play.
Right. So you try to act out these scenarios, and it's only 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And that's it. So,
that's real. And when you think about children in schools,
exactly,
what does that look like? One of the things I speak out against is this notion of code switching. That is, we shouldn't even use that language. That is a group of people not being able to be their authentic selves. And how can you be educated, or how can you be comfortable being educated when you're not able to be your authentic self? Like education, right, at a granular one-on-one level is helping you to build skills to solve those problems. But if you're not self, then what's being educated?
Yep.
So, the paranoia thing, I mean, that is the essence of trauma, and that is the essence of feeling threatened. And it may not even be real, but it doesn't matter, because experience has taught us that it could be real. And
especially if it's happened to us before, or it's happened to someone in say again, Coach Primm.
Yeah, someone who looks like us.
Right. Someone that looks like us, or someone in our immediate family, or, just because we do live in such a hyper visual culture, media, we're consumed with it. We're consumed by it. It's a part of our everyday reality, whether we want it to be or not. And so, from the time we get up in the morning until the time we go to sleep at night, our brains are being, programmed and molded by these visual images that we're seeing, compounded with, these auditory messages that we're hearing as well. And so, and
our teachers, right, going back to what's happening to Black and brown children at school, our teachers take those images to school. Oh, girl, I saw Love and Basketball, right? I saw Soul Food, I saw Juice twice. Girl, I got 3 bishops in my classroom, right? And I'm oversimplifying the argument, but and I'm thinking of my time when I was an administrator, and I was in a school that was just heavily populated with teachers from Teach for America, and I had 4 teachers who this was their first full-time job.
Yep.
And everything they knew about Black children, they got from
movies.
The Black people that they went to college with in movies.
Yep.
In movies. And I remember a teacher crying in my office. She went to Stanford. And she said, I talked to my kids about football, and I don't understand why they're not interested. And I said, that's a really nice try, but that's not, you're not listening to your kids, right? And she said, but I mean, I've been studying this, and I was getting a headache.
It was getting worse. It was getting worse.
It was getting worse.
Yeah.
And this young lady was she grew up in Southern California. She was Indian. Like she grew up in the States, but her parents
from India.
They were from India. So again, teachers bring a different level of paranoia about Black and brown boys and girls to schools. And oh girl, she gonna be like Gina off Martin. Like,
listen.
and I don't want no Pam in here, right? Like I don't want no Walona.
Mm-hmm. No, it's real. Or you know, the more you know, current shows like
Cookie.
Cookie. I mean, there you go, right? Or any of these music videos are like Love and Hip Hop, these quote unquote reality, which are heavily scripted, you know, reality TV shows. Like a lot of people, a lot of teachers in this educational context or the context of education, like they watch this and they internalize it, even with shows like Insecure, which is like, you know, it's a show that a lot of white people, a lot of Asian people do watch and consume, and rightfully so. Like in a lot of ways, it's a great show. It's modernized, and it really reflects a lot of, not wholeheartedly, but a lot of the culture that is very real for Black people, Black women, Black millennials. You know, but they watch this, and it's like, oh, okay, this is how Black people are as a collective, and then it just ends there. And so there is this mindlessness. There is this vast level of ignorance that is there that a lot of teachers do apply to their students. And
I heard Chuck D say in an interview that it's about balance, and that it's nothing wrong with Insecure in a vacuum, but there has to be a balance that that discusses and highlights the total African American experience.
Exactly.
And when you don't have that balance, that's what potentially distorts people's views when they're getting their views from television. And there's you know, there's only so much you can do about that, because you could have a balanced menu, but I just watch that, right? So, but I think you know, media is a part of those areas of activity that perpetuate racism. But I think historically, right, we can speak to the purposefulness of the lack of imbalance, and how that's perpetuated stereotypes, and how we as consumers, as African American consumers, have fed off of those shows and movies because it was some level of representation. Right. So I didn't like, as an example, I didn't like Good Times, but there was nothing else. So I watched, right? And so it's in that sense, it ends up being a catch-22. You know, I didn't like it, but there was nothing else.
Right. And you're watching, you know, people on the screen who look like you, who look like us. So there's a level of connection to it, culturally, racially, that we need. So really quickly, and I want to ask this question. You know, for some people who are watching this, you know, because we've been talking about Black boys and Black males in this society in particular, and a lot of the disparities that they are experiencing, and a lot of the oppressions that are unique to Black boys and Black males in general. Some people who are watching this may be asking, well, what about Black girls, right? And, you know, so I think especially the ways in which Black girls, especially in schools, elementary, middle, and high schools, and actually socially too, how young Black girls are adultified. And often you see this exhibited in the ways in which Black girls are penalized much more harshly than, you know, white girls or their white female counterparts for like really minor infractions, right? Also how Black girls are sexualized to no end. And also how they repeatedly experience some of the worst forms of brutality at the hands of law enforcement, police officers, school-based police officers, which results in like not only physical trauma, but that emotional trauma that a lot of Black girls have experienced. So really quickly, I want to run off a couple of cases in which this is played out. So on January 15th of 2019, the assistant principal and school nurse at the East Middle School in Binghamton, New York, they conducted a strip search on 4 12-year-old Black girls, alleging that they suspected, that they suspected that the girls were under the influence of drugs because they were, and I quote, hyper and giddy. So these girls, four 12-year-old girls were strip searched. In February of 2019, 4 white male security guards at the Hazeltown Area High School, which is located in Pennsylvania, they were actually filmed punching and violently detaining a Black female student. Now, in my own investigation, there was no information that was given regarding the events that led to her assault, but you have one, Black female student who is being punched and physically detained by 4 white men. So that's that. In October of 2019, 2019 was like a hot year for all of this, these physical assaults from police officers towards young Black girls. In October of 2019, last year, in New Mexico, at the Mesa View Middle School, a police officer named Zachary Christensen was filmed also slamming an 11-year-old Black girl on a wall and then subsequently down to the ground to detain her after she was reported by some school officials for, and I quote, standing up on the school bus and taking too many milk cartons from the cafeteria. Now, during this whole incident in which it was filmed, the 11-year-old girl was crying consistently and stated, "I am not resisting. Get off of me. You're hurting me." And then finally, in October of 2015, which I know for a lot of people, they heard about this story, they watched the video, a white male police officer named Ben Fields was filmed forcibly grabbing this young Black girl,
who was sitting in a chair.
Yep, she was sitting in her chair. He grabbed her by the neck, threw her down, and then drug her across the floor at a high school called Spring Valley High School in South Carolina. So
she's about 75 pounds.
Soaking wet, exactly. So, with those, and there are so many other cases as well, but I just wanted to highlight those 4 specifically. With those specific cases, and understanding that Black girls are also the consistent recipients of whiteness compounded with patriarchy, and which is very unique for Black women, right? Do you all have any thoughts on how school systems need to be restructured in a way where young Black girls, young Black female students are affirmed, where they are protected, and where they are also educated differently, just like Black male students as well? And if so, what does that look like?
So Terry, you have 2 daughters too. Go ahead, and I have a lot to say.
I'm sure you do, because both of y'all have 2 Black daughters, which is great. So what are y'all thoughts on that?
I got a lot of thoughts, and more of them, a lot of it is just from an exploratory perspective, because my initial reaction to this is, if my house is structured in such a way, then I'm not relying on the schools to teach my daughters anything but the subject matter that they went there to learn. You know what I'm saying? I'm almost feeling like I'm giving the school too much responsibility But I think my my issue would be more from the protection perspective, right? I think a lot of times, and I've had to learn this as a coach, that sometimes when a student is being defiant, because that's normally when these things escalate, when the authority feels like they're not being respected, right? And so now I'm going to show you physically, you know, what your place is in the hierarchy. And really, they need to be educated on how, you know, the de-escalation concept and all of that. But, you know, I really think that these are insecure individuals who are being asked to police, manage, you know, be the law enforcement, but the problem is within these individuals. So I almost think it starts from a human resource perspective. Like, why are these people in schools dealing with kids? And so, because if these same incidents happen with a different, you know, law enforcement, then we're probably talking about a different outcome. I mean, I've had to diffuse. I went from being the coach who you couldn't dare remotely suggest you were going to be defiant towards me, because I was going to respond to that. And then I had to really study and understand the kids that I was coaching. And that led me to respond to them differently. As a matter of fact, it led, and I guess this is where your question is headed, like, there is a certain environment that should be structured for kids who could potentially find themselves in these situations, right? It's a very complex issue. I mean, it's funny because my daughter was private school educated. You know, her last couple of years of high school, she was private school educated for preschool. By two of the top schools in the country. And then she went to a neighborhood middle school because her mom was the principal there. And then she went to a neighborhood high school because I let folks talk me into, at least for the first 2 years she went, because I let them talk me into her attending because she was good as an athlete. But I guess
you kind of broke up, Terry. Can you repeat that? You broke up. You said, I guess my
response to your question is, I think there needs to be teachers and administrators. Yeah, well, I was saying my feeble response. Can you guys hear me now? My feeble think it's a human resources, and these teachers and understand what their needs are, and therefore know how to respond to them whenever you know these cases arise. Did I go out?
It's a little choppy, but
I got
yeah, just a little bit, but we definitely got the gist of what you were saying. I think you're back now. Yeah. What about you, Des? Thank you, Coach Primm.
No, I definitely think there's something to be said for the lack of quality people in schools across the country, whether that be urban, suburban, or even rural.
Yep.
But one of the things I say in The Burning House is that that white supremacy is male dominated. So the first attack is against the black male, but that doesn't mean that there's only one attack.
Right.
And black girls are absolutely under attack. And I've had many conversations because I used to host a Twitter chat on educating black boys, and I would get hate mail and hate tweets. You know, you don't care about black girls. You're a chauvinist. You chauvinist pig. I've been called gay and all kinds of other things. And I was like, man, You know, I grew up in a hair salon. My mother was a hairdresser.
Right, right.
You know, when she was afraid for me to stay at home by myself, I would be in a hair salon surrounded by Black women. And then I worked in schools which were Black female dominated. So
right.
you know, the attack on Black women, on Black girls in schools is another form of white supremacy. And it is we've seen it being perpetrated by men, we've seen it being perpetrated by women. One of the disturbing things that I will say in terms of that last case that you mentioned was that none of the boys stood up to help her. Exactly. And in my school, I don't care if the boys in that room are 10, I don't care if they're 15, they're going to stand up to protect their sisters. That is Black education. That was almost as disturbing as seeing a grown man, because he couldn't get her out the desk. If you remember the video, he couldn't get her out, and when he got her out, he literally WWE slammed her on the linoleum. But those are all rooted in the stereotypical images that started in slavery. Of Black women experiencing less pain. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with, and I don't think I talked about this in the book, but I mentioned James Marion Sims and this quote unquote father of European gynecology who experimented on Black slave women. He was essentially extracting fetuses from Black women without anesthesia, even though we, as a medical community, have been using anesthesia in surgeries for a considerable amount of time. So this notion of Black women being more pain tolerant, being physically more capable, being physically more developed, not needing to take breaks. Even Thomas Jefferson said in his notes on the state of Virginia that the African was remarkably resilient in terms of their physical prowess, and that they didn't experience pain. And as Dr. Joy LaGrue said, you know, why would he say that? But he was going through his own cognitive dissonance.
Exactly.
Because he was a slave owner who was literally part of the process of working African people from can't see morning to can't see night. So those what we see in those cases, Jamaica, is the perpetuation of those beliefs that go back 400 and 500 years. And their physical development is at a more rapid rate than that of Asian and Latinx and white women, and then they're subhuman. So let's just talk about that. You could not be a slave if you were human,
right? So
you're not even part of the human family. So does it matter how I treat you, right? And those things are consistently perpetuated, and that's what we see in our school. And you know, the adultification of Black girls, there's a lot of scholarship on it, and I don't quote it in the book, but I do talk about these neoliberal discipline policies that anytime a person steps out of line, it is a threat to the end goal. So we will get rid of the people who threaten our end goal by over policing, by being hypersensitive to those things. So if your uniform is out of whack, if you're standing up on a bus, if you have extra milk cartons,
that's it.
All of the things that made me really, really mad when I was a teacher, right? All of those things turn into expulsion physical abuse, verbal abuse, multiple calls to parents, when it could literally be a stare or a glance that puts that kid back in line. But if I don't think you're human, then why would I take the time to take a human response?
Like, look, something as simple and as intimate as actually looking at someone.
Girl, sit down before I call you.
Right, exactly.
I got your grandma on speed dial.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's what I see in those things. And Dr. Monique Morris talks about those things a lot in the book Pushed Out. And one of the things that I found in doing the research for the Burning House is that the discipline data on Black girls compared to white females, there's a bigger gap between white females and Black females than Black boys and white males.
Yeah.
So they are, by all means, our young sisters are under attack by all means. And there's no disputing that evidence. And when you think about the hypersexualization or the adultification, and she has an attitude problem.
That's it.
It's just a cultural disconnect, and not really looking at the context of that behavior in terms of the need to protect myself from white supremacy, but also patriarchy, right? Because we're in a male dominant society, but I'm catching it from all sides.
Exactly.
Right? So there's this extra need to protect myself. And if I don't, then I will fall victim. And then I have to walk out of this school and be harassed in my own community because I'm also being hypersexualized and adultified
in my own neighborhood,
by those people,
in my own family,
by the Black men that I walk past every day.
The last question as we end, for both of you, what do you all think should be or are the next steps or strategies that need to happen like right now to sustainably transform the social, the structural, systemic, and communal conditions that we've already spoken about that constantly afflict Black males, Black children, and the Black community as a whole? And Coach Primm, we go to you first if you'd like, or Desmond.
Oh man,
go ahead, Coach.
Well, again, I think it starts in our community first. I think there needs to be a rebranding of what it means to be, Black, and because I think there's so many different definitions of it, and those definitions are perpetuated in media. It's so entrenched in media that, a couple of points ago, the word that came to mind or the phrase was we were propagandizing. You know what I'm saying? This like substandard Black person, like in all of these shows, right? And I think that there needs to be more imagery that's structured towards, success in the various, industries, important industries to this country. Obviously, the wealth, the family, the nutrition. I think there's so many poor images of us out there that we believe as a community, and I think we need to destroy those images and sort of come up with a rebranding. And then I think that kind of perpetuates the agenda that needs to be established, whether it be multiple agendas. And then I think everything kind of points to that. So there's been Million Man marches. I think there are other individuals like Dr. Boyce Watkins that are doing these conferences, right? I think those kind of things need to become more localized. It needs to be more, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like it just needs to be
incubated.
Yeah, there you go. Right. And heavily accessible, right? So it's not this kind of foreign thing that I heard is happening. It's something that it's close to me that I can actually participate in. And I think that needs to start immediately.
Agreed.
So.
Agreed.
Yeah, I would say, so I kind of have two answers. The non-practical answer is we need to fund our own freedom. And I think it's important that we pool our resources together financially so that we can politically, right, have a stronger say with our vote. To the degree that Terry's running for office and I say, yo, Terry, I'm going to vote for you. And he's like, fine, that's great. And then he gets in office and he ignores me because there was no contribution from me or the people I represent. So again, I'm quoting my mentor, Michael Billion, and he said, politics is like a casino. And you can go in a casino and watch, but what you really want to do is be at the table with money. And I think politically, our people are watching, right? Like you got in the casino with your vote, but you're not affecting any kind of change. So I think we need to fund our freedom, and we can have multiple agendas. It doesn't have to be a agenda, but we can have multiple agendas. And the people who are in office are beholden to us because financially we have backed them and we've sat with them and we've negotiated agendas, and they are beholden to meeting those agenda items. And no politician stays in office because he meets everyone's agenda items.
Right.
But no one stays in office by ignoring people who funded them.
More quid pro quo. Basically.
Yes, sir. So I think that is A, and the B of that is what we do in our schools, because we need community-controlled schools, but we also need Black owned and operated schools where we set the political agenda, we set the educational agenda for our students, and we are educating our children to solve our problems. I think those are two very big action steps. I'm going back to Neely Fuller and Frances Cress Welsing again. One of the things that Dr. Welsing said is change the language that you use to refer to people. She said, stop calling people niggers and dogs and bitches and hoes, and say my sister and my brother. And then she said, which I thought was so profound, she said, pick up the trash in your community. Make your environment physically look as best as it can. And that action makes you think differently about how you feel about the environment and the other people in it. And I just thought that was so profound for someone who literally grew up in a war zone. Right? Like, let's make this physically look as good as it can. Because if we do that, then there's an opportunity that we're going to have stronger connections with and be more cognizant of how we treat each other. Right? I think we have to stop using the language of white supremacy and stop using language that speaks to our oppression. And that's the words I used before. So those are, big things. But, I come back to the two of them a lot because they've helped me frame what I consider racism to be. And, until I get something different or change it, I reference those two, Dr. Welsing and Neely Fuller a lot. So I think that's where I would lead the conversation.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Both of you are absolutely brilliant and such a gift to our community, to this conversation, and to our world as well. So I am extremely, extremely grateful to the both of you for your minds, for your spirits, and also for your commitment to the work that you all do, and also your commitment to our community as Black people, and what we're doing now to propel us into a different, a healthier, a more unified state of being. So thank y'all so much. Such a wonderful conversation with the both of you. Brilliant minds, brilliant spirits, and just super grateful.
Pick up that book.
That's right. Make sure you all go out and get a copy of Desmond's book, The Burning House, which you can find on Amazon. Also, before we end, that reminds me, do you all have any social media that you want to share for people to follow you, follow your work, and the amazing things that you all are doing in this world in which we inhabit?
Well, of course, I'm on Twitter and Instagram, just Coach Primm. Look me up and follow what we're doing. Well, I think we're doing some pretty awesome things here at the university, but and I'm excited to announce that the university has become an active member in, dismantling white supremacy and racism. So I'm proud to be a part of a non-HBCU that sees the importance of engaging in this moment, and being a positive player. So follow us, keep track of us. And our students are they're becoming very emboldened during this time, and they're taking the leadership mantle and they're going to run with it. So our future is bright for our world, for sure.
That's awesome.
I love that.
Awesome.
I love that. Thank you so much, Coach Primm. What about you, Des? Where can people find you and your amazing work?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn at Desmond Williams, but on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, you can find me at Nylinka. That's Nylinka. Or you can go to my website. That's www.nylinka.org. I do a lot of work with helping schools and school districts support Black boys and other vulnerable groups. The book you can also purchase at nylinka.org. Just go to the products tab. It's right there. I will sign it and drop a copy in the mail to you. Okay.
That's it. And thank you so much, y'all. And everyone, you all can find me on Instagram, either at J.R. Baker-Flowers or at The Unlearning Project. And until next time, this is the last show for June 2020. It's been a hit. So thank you, everybody who has helped to support it and get the knowledge and the information out there.
New fiscal year.
Yes, right.
New fiscal year.
Exactly. And until next time, I will see you all later on for another amazing conversation, critical conversation here on Community Conversations, a call to action. So thank you both. Y'all stay safe, stay healthy, and stay beautiful.
All the best to you. All right.
Thank you so much.